party, we will be asking about specifically about ethics in procurement, because basically we wanted to be practical. What are the issues? What are the challenges? And Dr. Kirui has spent quite a bit of time defining what ethics is and why we should have ethics. I was going to pick a bit of that, but given the time being short, let me just say our hope and prayer is that we will not be the kind of company that has a strategic plan, has a list of core values, but they are more for the board. When you arrive at the reception, you see the core values. Those we say those are the stated core values. What we want is practiced core values. And that's why we thought, after defining and talking about values and ethics generally, we should take a bit of time just to say, how do you get everybody to have similar values, which is what I'm trying to deal with just now, hoping that as we discuss that, those of you in management will also be thinking that it's not enough to just have a list of values. There is more work that is actually required, and hopefully that is something that people are going to do. You know, I want to start by stating something I had. I happen to be the chairman of the Shore Pensioners Association, and our pension, the organization that manages our pension, happen to be managing several organizations' pensions. And in our last committee meeting, just last or 2 weeks ago, the organization which manages our pension said, you know, I'd like you old people to tell me what used to happen in Shell, because the behavior of the retirees from Shell is totally different from the behavior in the other corporates whose pensioners we are dealing with. And remember, many of the pensioners left the organization many years ago. I, for one, we used to retire at 55, so it's about 15 years. I'm about 70 now, or I'll be 70 in my birthday this year. And so it's many years. But he says, guys who are 70, 80, come to the office, and you can tell by the way they deal with you, those are different from the rest. And so this manager in the pension management company wanted to know, what is it that made you people, many years after you left the company, you still have the same way of dealing with the people? Even when somebody is unhappy with the payments or it was not done on time, there is a style in complaining that makes them look unique. It's not that they don't complain, but the way they complain, the kind of respect they have for young people, because we are all young people, these are retirees. And I'm saying all this in order to say that this whole subject we are discussing today is not for NECM today. It is going to determine the kind of retirees and pensioners that will be there when they are in their 70s, 80s. What kind of life are they going to be living? Because you see, what you practice over time is yours. Like one of the values in Shell is the value for safety and environment. And you can guess that if you get a guy in his 80s, he is likely to be thinking in terms of how to ensure other people are not hurt. By the way he has set up his house, by the way his stairs are, there will be a rail. It will cost extra money, but that became over time, it became part of them. I still remember walking with my wife to somebody with a new house, and it's on a slope. These beautiful looking houses was on a slope. So you come from the gate and you enter into one level. That's where the car park is. Then you go another set of stairs, and you now go to the ground level. So the car park is about the same level with the roof of the house. So we had, and of course, a very beautiful house, multi-million house. And we had my wife trying to walk from the car park to the area, to the door. And I said, what? These are dangerous. It's a brand new house. So we are going for the first time. And I told my wife, this is dangerous. Can you imagine the mother of this house coming out of the car and holding things with both hands and walking down these stairs that have no rail? What about if they just slip? Can you imagine the kind of accident we are talking about? And I said, I'll talk to them. And she was saying, hey, don't, these are, they are still so happy. Don't make them disappointed. But that is in me. That is something that you think about safety, you think about possibility of accident, not so that you live in fear, but so that you ask, what can I do to prevent the accident ever happening? That's a value. And it's with you, it's not something you stop because you have retired. Because it becomes a personal value. That's what you are hoping for NORCEM. That these values will be not values that are company values. They will become personal values. Because until they become personal values, you always have struggles in the company. Because you are saying this, but people are doing the opposite. This is what we call organizational culture, which is what we really are talking about. Simply put, organizational culture is the collective result of how people on the team think and behave, their shared values, and how they react to internal and external stimuli. The collective result of how people behave. So you are talking about your company culture. It's not how the MD behaves. It's not how the secretary behaves. It's how we behave as a people. A company culture and its corresponding set of guiding principles, which we normally call core values, are either decisively created and nurtured from the very beginning, and that will be the best. So that people who set up the company said, these are the boundaries. And we went earlier through that. What are core values? Core values are non-negotiable convictions. They are called non-negotiable because you never see it. If somebody breaks a core value, you don't debate it. Those people don't continue in the bus. They move off the bus. Because you cannot work with people whose values are different from the organization. And they are called non-negotiable convictions because they are not debated. So it's better when they are from the beginning. But more typically, they develop haphazardly over time through the beliefs and experiences of those on the team. And that's what you need to ask. Are your values have developed, or is a consultant somewhere who came and told you, these are the good values to have? It will take a long process from having them in the strategic plan to actually becoming the culture of the organizations. You know, values are certainly non-negotiable. An organization's value should be the bedrock of why the company exists. How behavioral norms are defined. What acceptable, what not acceptable in this organization. And how decisions are made. In which way can't you make a decision? In order to achieve, you do all that in order to achieve goals and fulfill the vision. In other words, we are saying you can have a wonderful vision and mission statement. But without values, you will not be able to reach that vision and mission. You know, those values must be authentic and relatively specific. In other words, for example, you can say your value is integrity. That's a meaningless thing because it means different things to different people. So you need to be specific so that people we agree the same thing. We can be saying the same thing, but we don't mean the same thing. So you need not just write them, but discuss them regularly. Initially with the new staff being recruited, but over time, repeatedly. So they actually resonate with everybody in the team. But why do we actually need this culture of values? You know, values help guide action. So if you really want similarity of action, we must have similarity of values. If you want similarity in behaviors, if you want us to have similar norms, so you can see this is the way we as an organization do. And that's what I'm sure when you are pitching for business, that's what you say. But if you say that and it's only in management, it will soon not work. You know, they can act as a North Star. Values act like a North Star. And those of you who understand what a North Star is, and help your team move in the same direction. North Star helps people who are exploring to know exactly the direction you are going. Am I moving to the left or to the right of the North Star? That's what they should be. Having strong core values for your team provides employees with a guiding light that helps them to achieve desired results. Without lived out core values, you create a lot of havoc in organization. Someone does something that was right in his previous place, then you start firing them, saying, but I did nothing wrong. I used to do it in the other. How come? What's wrong with this? After all, what I did helped the organization. People feel frustrated because they can't predict what management is going to say. You know, when you talk about values, it's a values, you need a value about people. You know, some organizations, they love things and use people to get things. So that you can tell the value here is making money, making profit. People, we use them. But a good organization, you know, loves people and uses things to help people. What is the value in the organization? What about the issues of integrity? Is there something that is acceptable or tolerable as long as it's not too bad? Or is it absolute integrity? How is the employee going to know? Do you have a value that allows challenges? Can a messenger challenge the boss? Can the reception stop somebody doing something who is senior to them? What's your value on that? What about the whole issue about growth and learning? Is it in your DNA? Where somebody joins your organization at this competence level, there is a commitment to the organization. If they leave, that person leaves only 3 years later, the next organization will get a better, more equipped person. Of course, if it is your value, it will show by how you invest in it. What about passion about work? Do you go for people because they have passion for work, or just because they are competent? Are you impressed by the fact that a guy had first class honors, or are you impressed by the fact that they are committed to their work? Do you envisage big and start small, or you want to jump the law of the farm? Steve Covey, who has written the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, says the law of the farm applies. What's the law of the farm? That you can't harvest something you have not weeded, and you cannot weed something you have not planted, and you cannot plant on a ground you have not prepared, and you can't skip. You cannot skip a step. But you have organizations that are in a hurry. They don't believe in the law of the farm. Is that what is the view of your organization on this? What about the whole issue about generosity? Is the organization a generous giver, or is the organization made up of self-serving takers? Because there are always 2 viewpoints. There are givers and there are takers. And if you have a friend like that, you understand that if he buys you a meal, the next time he cannot buy another meal because he's counting until you also buy him a meal. But there are people who don't want. They are givers. They never count whether the other guy ever did anything. Now, let me ask you, what are the values concerning, what's your organization value concerning, are you a net giver or a net taker? You always think, what did I get out of it? Now, if I'm friends with you, what do I get out of it? You never think about, what do I give? the people who go for efficiency, who say we can do a lot more by doing less. We can do a lot better and faster. In other words, you are the kind of a person who looks not just for effectiveness, but also looks for efficiency. What is value? What are your values on that? Do you believe in a jolly atmosphere, or you think people who are laughing are not serious with their work? Or do you allow a group of people who laugh hard, loud, and often? Or people frown, they think you are not a good engineer if you are laughing. They think you are not a good engineer if you make a joke. They think you are not a good engineer. You cannot be doing serious work if you are not, if you are relaxed. What are your values on this? Now, I know we were asked for your values, but let me ask Alex again. I remember Alex was, I think he told me the values last time. Alex, what are the values of the organization?
Integrity.
Let's stop with that one. The first one is integrity. Then let's ask somebody to answer the question on the chat, right on the chat. Give an example of how integrity has been tested in real life within your organization and what actually happened. Write the story, assuming you can, on the chat box. Has that, because you see, a value becomes part of the value when it is tested. So it has never been tested. You are not sure whether the organization really holds that value. So please write on the chat box when that value of integrity has ever been tested in your working life within the organization. Especially the older people, although even the newer people may have already been tested on it. Alex, the second one?
Second one is due diligence.
Due diligence. In other words, you don't just accept something. You are told jump, and you say ask how high. You are the kind of person who told jump, and wants to find out why should I jump, how should I jump. I hope I'm interpreting the value correctly, Alex.
Yeah.
Now let's ask people, has that ever been tested in your working life? Please write on the chat box how it was tested. The next one?
Client focus.
Planned focus.
Yes.
Now that I am not sure I can interpret. Please interpret for me.
He meant client.
Client focus. Oh, customer focus. So it's only changing the word from customer focus to client focus. Okay. Customer focus, client focus. That's a very important one. Has it ever been tested? So yes, surely we are really customer focus. Example, this happened. Please write it on the chat box. Is there any other, Alex?
Last one is professionalism.
Professionalism. And that refers to what I was talking about earlier, about efficiency and keeping your word and things like that. Am I right? Alex, am I interpreting it correctly?
Yes, it's just attitude towards work and good behavior towards work.
Okay. Has that been tested? I would guess so. Can somebody help us with examples?
John, I can comment.
Thank you very much. Please.
Yes. Whenever there are tenders, before even we go into preparing a proposal, the first thing is also to do a due diligence with the client, the potential client, about the services to be delivered. And then very key is there are times when maybe we don't, there is some some experts maybe that are not within the organization. And because out there, the market is big and there are some maybe service providers who are not genuine, or maybe like what you call the briefcase consultants, is always one of our key issues is to do a due diligence on this particular sub-consultant or an expert who is coming on board, so that as we move along, whatever baggage that particular person could be having could come and affect us. So that is very key when we are doing any partnerships with other sub-consultants. We always do this so that also we uphold high levels of professionalism and integrity with our main client. Thank you.
That's a very good example. Anybody else with another example of any other of the values that has been tested and they passed or failed? Faith, do you want to comment? Ibuhila. Faith.
Yes, Dr.
Karibu. I hope you know the meaning of the word karibu.
Yes, I do.
Okay. I was told this is an international meeting. We in Kenya speak Swahili English rather than English. We always mix with Swahili. Anyway, which of the values do you think you have seen tested?
Okay, not professionalism, where in my area of duty, where you're supposed to recruit people based on their skills, people who qualify for the job, but you find sometimes others even don't qualify, but it forces, not here where I'm working, but somewhere else, where you are forced to hire that person to compromise your professionalism of doing the right thing, looking for the right skill, and following the right recruitment process.
Why would the owner want to have somebody working for them that is not the most competent? Do you think we are just trying to imagine? Why would anybody tell you, you try to get this one, and yet finally they are the ones going to lose, isn't it?
Yes.
What would be motivating them?
Self-interest.
In other words, this is an organization owned by 5 people. One of them wants to get something extra.
Yes.
Okay. So if you cut corners in recruitment, you are breaking the value called professionalism, faith. Have I gotten you right?
Yes, as a profession, you have to do the right thing by ensuring that you're following the right procedure and you're following what your profession says without being compromised.
Okay, thank you. That's a very good example, Faith.
The biblical text,
Yeah.
the international version, 1 Psalm 12, verse 1 to 5. Someone said to all Israel, I've listened to everything you said to me and have set a king over you. 1 Psalm 12, verse 2. Now you have a king as your leader. As for me, I'm old and gray, and my sons are here with you. I have been your leader from your youth until this day. First Psalm 12, chapter 3. Here I stand. Testify against me in the presence of the Lord and his anointed. Whose ox have I taken? Whose donkey have I taken?
Sorry. So let me try again. Doesn't seem to want to go back to what I... Okay, can you read that size or it's too small? Are you able to read?
Okay, I'll try. First Samuel 12.
It's Samuel, First Samuel. It is Samuel. First Samuel.
First Samuel 12 to 3, chapter 3. Here I stand, testify against me in the presence of the Lord and his anointed, whose ox have taken, whose donkey have I taken, whom have I cheated, whom have I oppressed, from whose hand have I accepted a bribe to make me shut my eyes. If I have done any of these things, I will make it right. 1 Samuel 12:4. You have not cheated or oppressed us. They replied, you have not taken anything from anyone's hand. 1 Samuel 12:5. Samuel said to them, the Lord is witness against you, and also his anointed is witness this day, that you have found anything in hand. He is witness, they say.
Good. This is a guy who is retiring and handing over to the next head of state. He was called Samuel. He was both a priest, a preacher, and a king. He's a law. He used to be called judges. And he is saying at the end, any one of you is free. Just speak before you are the next leader about any unethical behavior I have. If we really want to instill the values in our organization, there must be commitment of the value by the top. That's very, very important. There is no way you tell people, if you want the organization to have a culture that has values, there is no way you tell them, do what I say, not what I do. Habits are caught, not taught. And remember, something there's a culture, not because it's written on a board, but because people have done it over time until it's part and parcel of them. If you are not doing it as a top, it will not work. And so you need to come out very, very strongly against a manager who does not exhibit any of that value, because it will destroy the whole company once people in management are not committed to any one of the values you have set up. I'm told Singapore became first world nation in one generation simply because they got a president who was an example of values. And if you didn't keep the value, including his own relatives, they got in real trouble. And within no time, everyone knew these values are for real, we must keep to them. So in the organization, it must be that there will be a bigger punishment for anybody senior who breaks a value, because it's not just him, the influence he has. So the first step in entrenching values in organization is to ensure that you have no compromise with the people in the leadership who break values. For example, you have said your one value is integrity. Integrity means you are faithful to your wife. You can't be called a man of integrity when you're having dogos and whatever, or sugar mummies or whatever. Because you can't be said you have integrity. So if you have a manager who is befriending the new intern, like one president in America did, and was almost impeached, that kind of a person, you can't start saying, but you know, it's not his engineering work is okay. Question mark. How can you claim to have integrity? And there is somebody who has no integrity and is in the leadership, just by the way he is relating with the new intern that came to the organization. It is very, very crucial that you show no tolerance at all to anybody in the leadership who is breaking any one of the values. Number two, if you really want these values to become culture, you must communicate the values. And I talked about that earlier. It's not enough to put them on the board. You must explain them. They mean different things to different people. For example, when you say don't steal does not mean the same thing to everybody. There are people who believe don't steal means don't steal from the company. But if they found a way of stealing from the client, that's different. I did not take any of your money. No. I just took client's money. So you need to find out, what does integrity mean? Define the values. Don't just talk about them often. If you have a newsletter, every issue should have something on one of the values, so that you keep until everybody knows exactly what the company means by the value. People are not allowed to interpret for themselves. The company helps them to interpret. This is what we mean by these values. Communicate the values and do it to the new employee, then do it regularly and repeatedly. In every company meeting, there will be something on one value or the other. So don't just communicate them, educate the values. Educate for values. And number 4, set standards for values. In other words, how do you measure integrity? The unfortunate thing is that most organizations measure performance of the job. They don't measure values, they don't measure character. And in management, there is a maxim that I agree with: whatever gets measured gets done. So why are you surprised that people can be getting promoted grade by grade, yet the values are bad? Because what is measured in the annual appraisal has nothing to do with values. Now, if you claim that values are important to organization, where in the performance appraisal are values? Number 2, even if they are they subjective? So that somebody who likes you forgives you for something you did, one who does not like you highlights it. There need to be key performance indicators, such that when you say I am unethical, even another person will say the same thing. Even my mother will say the same thing, because you are using a performance management system that can easily identify who is keeping values and who is not. And if you don't have a system of measuring performance in values, and you don't act on the measure, so the first thing is stated. Number 2, create the measure. Number 3, apply the measure. Number 4, act on the measure of each one of the values. Have you debated it? If you ask how you measure integrity, how do you measure integrity? What about professionalism? What are the key performance indicators that show somebody who is professional? And do you normally give targets for each year? And are the people measured as to whether they are able to reach the targets? Number 5, do you recognize performance on values? In other words, who gets promoted, who gets a prize, who gets bonus? Simply, he may not have brought in a lot of money, but he showed an example of values. Basically, people assume to have values, so even if you do it in values, nobody recognizes you. Number 6, is there consequence management for wrong values? Who was fired? Who was demoted because of wrong values? What happened to somebody who did wrong? People know, it is in the grapevine. Everybody knows what so and so did. But they are still there. Nothing has happened. I've run out of time, but I would have wanted us to discuss this. But we have run out of time. So let me, as I finish this section, just talk about sources of values. If somebody has joined your company, how can you help him to have values? You know, values are within our core. But how did they get there? The Boy Scouts of America argue that most people learn their values or morals at home. So if the home did not do the right thing, you guys already have a problem. Or a church or synagogue or mosque or school, wherever. So maybe from parents we have get something good or teachers. But now when the parents are themselves without values, what happens? Too often young people today are most influenced by what they see and hear on television on the streets or on the street. So the values a guy has is what the film he saw somewhere. That's why, for example, there was a Vulabaro when there was one of the textbooks was kind of supporting homosexuality in one of the Kenyan textbooks. And it's just a story. You are teaching somebody how to read, but the story he is reading is of somebody who married a man who married another man, and that character is doing so good. You are without ever teaching it, you are teaching a new value. And you get surprised about your children behaving in a strange way. Those values are taught on TV. Those are areas. Whatever values espouse become the child's moral guide and form the cornerstone of his conscience. For example, what matters for success is less whether your father was rich or poor than whether you knew your father at all. In other words, we are talking about parents giving values, but the main challenge is no longer to expand economic opportunity but to overcome social weakness that stem from the post-marital family and the inability of many people to get through schools. The other day, I read from the Nation newspaper that about 60% of children in school come from broken homes or single-parent homes. So the values will also follow that. And of course, we have all kinds of things where modernity is teaching that there are no absolutes. In other words, you can put a value, but that's your value, not mine. Why do you expect, you are colonizing me. Why is the organization saying their value is mine? I don't believe in it. Because there is a new teaching that there are no absolutes. And values are determined by consensus of a social contract. Thus, as knowledge increases, values change in order to be relevant. Now, is that the kind of young people you are getting? You can see when you say this is my value, they don't mind. That's yours, not mine. And that is going to create problems. And remember, my discussion today is on having commonality of values, creating a culture. If you're aware of that, then that's the first thing you have to deal with. Of course, for those who are Christians, they believe the Quran, the Bible has the values. And those who maybe are Muslims who believe that the Quran has values. You know, culture is one of the things that will give you values. What kind of culture have you come from? The dictionary defines culture as the totality of socially transmitted behavior, patterns, arts, beliefs, institutions, and all other products of human work and thought. So the culture people come from helps to give them values, and it will be an uphill task to overrun it. But yet, if the company wants to change value, they must understand the culture people are coming from. Somebody called Dr. Bian Kato, who used to live in Nairobi in the 1970s, said the basic philosophy of a society which gives meaning to the outward manifestation is also part of that society's culture. The philosophy that the society has. Culture gives you your worldview. What is worldview? Glasses through which you interpret life. So the kind of worldview you have will tell you that's good, that's bad. And that's why you find people doing strange things which you think are strange, but to them they are actually normal. You know, when we're talking about culture, we're talking about a set of characteristics that sets one group of people apart from another. For example, we sometimes attribute differences in the way the English act as opposed to the French, or the result of cultural differences. In doing so, we take a vast number of differences and agglomerate them under one umbrella called English culture. So, you need to understand that if you want to create culture in your organization, take role modeling, and that's why I emphasize the importance of management. But in addition to that, you can have a mentoring role modeling system where any new staff is attached to another staff who has the right values, and that will help to move it. But of course, you are talking about true models. How many is quoted as saying that true role models are those who possess the qualities that you would like to have. So don't just tell me to follow a model I don't agree with. And those who have affected us in a way that makes us want to be better people. People always have their celeb, the guy they would like to be like. Now if that person is willing to spend time with you, since you already admire him, it will be easier to pick his values. That's the driving force to the acquisition of the value held by the role model, is because you trust him and you admire him. If somebody is not trusted, he can't influence the values. So you'll not be able to get that culture in organization if the people who are trying to demonstrate the value are not trusted or admired. To instill a new organizational culture, the following things are very important. Involve everyone in the creation of the set of values. Debate those values. Let it not be top bottom. Let there be a debate of those values. What do they mean? How? Create a compelling vision for the future. Show how those values are useful for your vision and mission. There must be somebody willing to spend quality time at trying to put an association between the value and the performance of the organization. Because when people realize the two are going together, they'll be more committed to the values. Show why that will not happen without the given value. Show how whatever it is you want to achieve in the future cannot happen unless we keep as an organization to these values. Please communicate expectation clearly and monitor and reward the right behaviors. And we could go on, but I've run out of time. But I've emphasized the importance of using rewards. I would like to have talked about telling stories. I'll try to get stories out of you, but I would like to encourage you to write stories in your newsletter. If there's a company newsletter, talk about the example of somebody who did something that demonstrates professionalism. Another issue, write a story of somebody who demonstrated, and let's those stories be told until anybody who comes and hey, we used to have a manager, he was like this is what he did, he is really admired, he even got a promotion. Those stories are stories that will help to create over time a culture that you admire. Learn to give feedback. Evaluate values being practiced. You know, I talked about that earlier. What gets evaluated gets done. Continuously affirm staff with good values. Don't just affirm people whose performance technically was okay. Did they? You know, the end will not justify the means. Did they follow the right means? Were they following the right values? Hold people to account. And I've talked about mentorship, relationship. Now, I'd like to give you a moment to just ask me questions. But my hope was to see what you're after is not just having a set of values, but creating a culture of people who have values, good values. So, time for questions or comments. And you can write your question or your comment on the chat box, or you can unmute and say something. They really communicate the importance of not just talking about values, which Dr. Kroy talked about, but going to find a process, creating a process, and should be part of management responsibility to create a process that will ensure values move from the page into the hearts of people and take their heart and mind. Maybe let me pick Sarah and hope that Sarah will, will put a comment. Did I communicate, Sarah? I know Sarah.
Can I communicate?
Yeah, Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I think John, the presentation was quite informative. More so, I think the points, a few points are picked, especially on the culture, because most of the time when people join an organization, or even at home, or even a country, there is that tendency to feel trapped, that you found people doing this, so you feel like you are going against the grain, what people already know, so it's an enormous task that you cannot be able to change. So even if you join a company I mean, you have values, but the company has not, you feel trapped. But I think, as you have said, it is changing that culture, which is founded on non-negotiable values. So I believe culture is quite key, as you have mentioned, and it's possible so long as people have the company or even a country is working with the values that are known and established and are to benefit, they are people-centered. Then I think also you said something on communicate values in the company. When somebody does something that was ethical or had the right values, let it be celebrated, and also on the other side the negative one. I think that also that's quite something, because I think sometimes some things are hidden and people may not know what is happening or the consequences of working or practicing the right values or not practicing the right values. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, I did not give up on you. Sarah, were you about to say something?
Yes, I am having a problem with the technicalities, but now I think you can hear me.
Very clearly, Sarah.
Yes, I'm your student. So, what I've taken home, actually we have communicated very well, is we actually have a newsletter which comes every 3 months, and I've picked that we can actually be talking about one of the values in every newsletter, because sometimes we are judging people for being unethical, and maybe we have not overemphasized how important it is to us. So by putting it there, we are trying to show people you can be a very good employee, you can be coming very early, you are giving us a lot of money, but as long as you are ethical, those things don't matter to us. So I've heard that we need to really emphasize it if we want to achieve it.
Thank you. Thank you. Who wants to be the last to comment about the process of creating an ethical culture? Because now we are not talking about one person being ethical, we're talking about and you know, once you have an ethical culture, anybody who is not unethical will be uncomfortable. Like Peter is saying, they feel, I can't fit here. They resign very quickly. Because they realize nobody's storm can allow them to go the wrong way. And you know, for example, many of unethical things are always a network. So if you have a strong culture against something, it will be difficult for people to practice the unethical one. But when there is a strong culture that people do wrong things and is accepted, it will be difficult. Again, like Peter said, it will be very difficult to do the right thing. because they think you are queer, they think you are strange. So that's why you want to move the whole organization, not just one individual. Who wants to be the last to comment about that process? But the two comments are very good. Anybody?
John, I don't want to be the last one, but I can make my comment. We work in an environment in which we are sort of like, the political people. We are always being engaged by grants to check the quality of the work or to do designs. And there is always at the other end a contractor who is doing the work. So there we are in between. If we don't give, our grants best value for money, obviously the many things will be compromised, whether it's the quality of the work or the cost and so on and so forth. And that is the reason why we said that this thing called ethics and integrity is something that is inside of us. If we do not inculcate it, then it's very easy for me when I'm in a project and the contractor approaches me with an envelope, to say who will know. I mean, we all have need for money, but if it is in me that it is wrong to do this, then I will not present even the opportunity for the contractor to come and approach me in the past. Or even if he did, I would know how to sign and still be effective. So we are so grateful, John, for this, because Kasha said gives us such a difficult thing to achieve. I have picked the Terra story, kind of approach that you have mentioned, where people can sort of be reporting on their project and, for all the instances that come around, either in full disclosure or even anonymously, so that we keep this going. But as a company, we have also been talking that we will now maybe consider improving the values in the KPI evaluations. We do KPIs every year. Everybody in the company is supposed to do some KPI sort of agreement with their supervisor, and then at the end of the year again there is an assessment, so that we keep this talk about the integrity going all the time. So my comment is that it will take a lot for us to achieve finally that cultural change, which considers that nothing is more important than integrity in the work that we can do the major.
Asante. Who wants to be the last? Mr. Homer did not want to be the last, so he is hoping somebody else will comment. Because that's really what this whole day is all about. It is creating for this engineering firm a ethical culture that will overrun, and over time, even after all of you have retired, it will still go on. Anybody else with a comment?
Yes, Dr. Nganga.
Yes, Alex again. Karibu.
As a company, we are ISO certified, and that means we have some procedures that we have to follow when we are executing our projects or as we carry on our daily duties. And that means those procedures, most of the items there will support an ethical culture, such that as a unit, as a company, not just an individual, everything will be clear how we work, and even those who will want maybe to derail the process or think of an ethical activity, they will be pressured by the procedures that have been laid down. and that now will have an wholesome company that is ethical.
Yeah, that's good. But of course, you know the joke about ISO 9000. Shell was among the very first organization to, our lubricant plant, which was reporting to me, was among the first one 30 years ago, thereabout, to be ISO certified. And they say ISO certification means promising the client you will be consistent. Even if you are going to make an error, you don't, and you promise to make one error only per day, you will not make two. So you may not necessarily, you can write the procedures in such a way that they allow an ethical behavior, and the procedures will still be consistent, and you will still be ISO certified because you are following the procedure. The auditor comes to check the quality auditor is coming to check whether you keep your own procedure, but you're the one who wrote it. That's why I am agreeing with you, Alex. You can use them right. Write them in such a way that they enforce ethical behavior. But on themselves, the ISO certification process does not enforce ethics necessarily. I hope, Alex, you'd agree with me.
That's true.
Yeah, so